Ryan.
Today, we are learning basketball with Lucas Kaplan. He's an NBA writer with Swish Theory, Nets Daily, formerly of SIS Hoops. Covers the Brooklyn Nets, the New York Liberty, the NBA Draft, holding down Brooklyn up there. Co-hosts the Backcourt podcast with Sarah Kustok. And, one of my favorite writers on NBA Twitter, holding down the Swish Theory team today. Got to check in from Brooklyn with Lucas. But before we dive in, how you doing today, Lucas?
Oh, I'm doing great. The Nets are on the West Coast, so I'm pushing my bedtime back later than usual, watching a lot of ball. They lost by 59 points last night. We're recording this on Thursday. Wednesday's loss to the Clippers was pretty crazy, but it hasn't all been like that. They played really hard, so I'm doing good. It's 35 degrees in New York City. Not too bad. I don't know. I'm feeling good.
Man, what a time to talk about the Nets. I think I saw you tweet out it was the franchise low in points or point differential or something like that.
Worst loss in franchise history, 59.
There you go. What a time to talk about the Nets. So maybe that's reason enough to start with, the good team in town at the moment, the New York Liberty, the championship team. What was it like just covering a team that wins a championship, gets to celebrate in the streets, throwing a parade, and like all these great talents coming together? Like I've loved, Courtney Vandersloot since like the Chicago Sky days.
Yeah.
She's one of my favorite just players, passers in the league. And then obviously Jonquel Jones, like getting that recognition as the finals MVP award for the series, and just full of talent. Like the W seems to have multiple super teams where you go through like their top 5 or top 7. It's like, well, not only do I know all these players, but they were all like all stars or all defense at some point in their careers. So, what's it like just covering such a special team?
It's funny covering a 12-team league, now 13, and like, in a couple of years it'll be 16, right? Because I don't know if you feel this way, but where the W's at right now from a talent standpoint reminds me of where the NBA was 10, 15 years ago, where the guys coming into the league, you could feel this shift, this upward boom in talent. But in the W, there's 12 teams. So this talent is spread around pretty densely, pretty compactly. And I love that you mentioned Sloot and JJ because, Breanna Stewart and Sabrina Ionescu are all world stars in every sense of the word, popularity, talent, all that. And you could go down the list of Liberty players that I really loved watching this year. Benijah Laney-Hamilton, Leonie Phoebish, the whole gang, Niara Sabally. But, Sloot probably doesn't get enough credit, even within W circles, for the career that she's had at like 5'6", 5'7", being an absolute downhill monster, paint creator, kick out passes, wraparound passes inside. She has some of that Steve Nash like pliability below the rim. She can hit all those passes. So having her win a title, and then having Jonquel Jones win a title, who's probably another decently underrated. You don't want to say that about a former MVP, but really a unicorn. I like at 6'5", 6'6", one of the physically biggest players in the league, and can hit one-legged fadeaways, can throw behind the back passes, shoots 40% from 3. The talent on that team is just so staggering. And that's before you even get into the moment for women's basketball, the parade in New York, like the joy, how many fans were coming out to Barclays Center. That game, I'm sure you saw it on TV. That environment was just something else. And I don't know if you had any favorite players to watch or moments from them, but they were just a joy to watch for any basketball fan.
Yeah, I mean, obviously that huge like Ionescu like 3-pointer to like win either game 5 maybe
game 3.
Game 3. Yeah, well, I get them mixed up, but man, I mean that was a crazy shot. I honestly, I hope I don't say her name wrong, but Sabally was like really impressive. Like she stood out to me in that series, just like making hustle plays, like earning her time on the court, like almost willing the team to win, especially like late in some of those later games in the series. And obviously Jonquel Jones is just like special talent to me. Like I'm just glad she gets that recognition.
Me too.
Like she's gotten like a lot of different awards along the way. Like when I was going through like her basketball reference page, I think they like retweeted me because I like screenshotted it. And it was just all her awards all in one place. And you like go through the list and it's just like every award you can think of, but almost like scattered up throughout the career
Right.
instead of maybe like a clear like 2 or 3 year peak. So it's cool to get that recognition. And you mentioned like all the talent. It's just super impressive and really a fun series just for basketball fans in general. And
Hmm.
you had some really awesome pieces. We'll probably hit on one or two of your pieces on the Liberty, a piece on Scoot Henderson, dive into the Nets a little bit, and then we have some other development and draft ideas to hit on later. So I'm
Yeah.
down to dive right in. And you wrote about Sabrina Ionescu and how she kind of reclaimed the glory of the combo guard, and then you also wrote about how the New York Liberty, the whole team, is kind of maximizing and redefining size as a concept. And from what I gathered, it's this general idea that like small ball was a theory that was the future of the league, quote unquote. And at the same time, it's really skill ball
Yeah.
because size and height is the ultimate advantage in basketball. So if you can combine, if the taller players can develop those skills, they're gonna have the edge at the end of the day when you put all of them out at once.
I forget who coined that, like, small ball is really skill ball. I feel like I heard that somewhere, and, you're even seeing
Yeah,
it you're seeing it at all
it's not
levels.
mine.
It's not
It's
mine
somewhere
either.
online.
It's not mine either, but, it's funny to touch on JJ for a second. I feel like Jonquel would have been like, I noticed a lot of NBA nerds who started watching more W were just so enamored with her, and it's funny because I think about how much of a almost like NBA darling she would be. Like, she has the on-offs throughout her career are nuts. She takes all of her shots at really like high percentage, in the paint, threes. Like, she really is the platonic ideal of like what you would want your all-world center to be. She plays like the MVP centers we have in the NBA, and I think that as the W grows more and there's more attention on different players and skill sets, her, I guess, I don't know, her status as like how unique, how good she really is, hopefully goes up with that. But
Yeah, and that
and yeah,
may
she's a big part of it.
I wanted to pull up her chart to hit on some of what we're talking about. Like just to hit on how like expansive her impact has been. She was most improved back in 2017,
Yeah.
was the sixth woman of the year back in 2018, and then MVP of the whole league 3 years later in 2021. And then 3 years after that, WNBA champion and finals MVP. And along the way, she was the leaders in blocks in 2019, a 3-time rebound champ, 4-time all defensive, 5-time all WNBA. Like obviously, has some peak years in there like normal as well, but it's just cool to me how long she's been like showing up, impacting the game on both ends and at a high level, and just kind of getting like different recognition along the way to really put together that like clear basketball resume headed for great things. And not to I almost don't like to make comps to the NBA because it's probably unfair and
Right.
just a little bit not trying to minimize any talent here, more so for basketball fans that aren't as aware. First time I got to see her play, it reminded me of Chris Bosh a little bit, where like she can defend the rim, she can hit that midi pull up like you said, she
Yeah.
can get out to the 3-point range. She's agile, but also a really strong finisher in the paint. So
Yeah. I mean,
just a
she
lot to like.
like the Liberty would do like, for example, at the end of the shot clock, like let's say shot clock below 5 seconds on defense, they would switch with her because not only is a late shot clock switch, you don't give up an advantage, you force whoever has the ball to make a tough shot. She could slide with all of these guards, and then she would get runouts and early seals in transition. And so those were kind of some of my favorite plays from her because it was two-way impact in a span of like 10 seconds, or she could get a board and bring the ball up the court. And just to put in perspective how skilled she was, I mean, her passing in Connecticut when she was really post up force, getting like 10 to 15 possessions a game, posting up on the block, and then trying to score one-on-one, or if a double came, reading the floor. That's really how she got her offense in Connecticut. She goes to the Liberty. They were pretty staunch on 5 out, picking pops for her. She's kind of running delay actions at the top of the key. And she is just whipping like one-handed skip passes across the court. The Liberty will 45 cut and the corner will come up, and she's exploiting that every time. So it was cool to see her skills transfer among, sort of maybe not a role shift, but a play style shift. Now she's catching it on the perimeter, pump fake, go, doing decel steps at 6'5". I mean, I tried to devote a lot of my time this year to making people aware of how rare of a talent she is. And honestly, in some ways, like a bellwether for where the W's going. Like I said, in NBA 15 years ago, you just get these unicorn type athletes who are big, strong, fast, and can have all these skills. She kind of feels like one of the players we'll look back on, in 15 years. Like, damn, like that was kind of, you see all these centers now picking, popping, pump fake, go to the basket. That was JJ. And as you mentioned, I think we should dive in a little bit into that article. She was a big part of how the Liberty were able to implement, small ball concepts, but with huge size. So you had Jonquel as a center operating from the top of the key, shooting 40% from three, and then a great rebounder, a force inside. And that, I think the Liberty are going to be looked at as the epitome of modern, not small ball, but skill ball, because they were doing it with just huge size at every position.
Just pulling up the article here so the viewers can see a little bit of what you're talking about with the size advantage and how big they play. So you got Breanna Stewart, Jonquel Jones in the front court, and some of the clips in your article here.
Yeah, that one is great because if you play that again, right, they get a switch, kind of a post switch. Jonquel scrams, and then Stewie makes a rotation. And you just have 2'6", like close to 7-foot wingspan athletes protecting the rim and making multiple rotations. And I don't know if there's a clip, if I included this clip in the article, but they were so good at scram switching away from post mismatches. This one, Stewie intercepts a cutter, stays with her on the perimeter, and then the length doubling and recovering, and then you have Benijah swarming, and it's just three between JJ, Stewie, and Benijah, three just destructive defensive athletes chasing these smaller guards around and kind of overwhelming them with size and length. Like you think about small ball defense, switching versatility. Oh, we have the foot speed to keep up with everybody. The Liberty do, but they were so destructive because they would also just envelop you with these ridiculous wingspans.
Yeah, it's just not fair for the other teams when you're coming at them with that much size, that much wingspan, that much speed, and I mean, being able to switch everything is a luxury. And like, if you to do it well, I should say, and just having that defensive feel for the game, to know when to switch and know how to just have the wingspan and use it effectively and be able to contest and just make life difficult for the other team. I mean, that's all you can really do and hope for as a team here. And
they play like a lot of different coverages because of that. Like they trap on the sidelines. That was a core tenet of them, because if you're trapping with Stewie, who's just a monster at the level, you have Jonquel, Niara, even Benijah, who's big and strong behind you. So it allows you not just to switch, as you mentioned, but to play all these coverages. There's one of my favorite possessions of the year came early against the Sky. As I said, they did a great job scram switching out of post mismatches, and in the W, so many advantages are created in the post. More so than the NBA. Generally true of women's basketball. And there was a play where Sloot got switched onto a post player, and both Jonquel and Stewie run over from the weak side to get her out of there. And they kind of mess up the coverage because they're both coming to get her out of there. And they end up forcing a turnover, and Stewie kind of figures it out. But, credit to the big players on this team for also just being so active and aware. Their defense, as you can see in these clips, is just, Stewie's just swarming at the level.
No doubt. And what would you say, really separated them from the league because of all the things that you're talking about between the size, the defense, the agility, the mobility. Like, what was it that what was it, just the talent, or was it the defense and the mobility there, the switchability as anything else?
I really do think it was, because when they got into trouble, as you saw in the Minnesota series, it was kind of their offense. They never totally mastered having all that talent and creating easy buckets for themselves in playoff series. Like, obviously here in the regular season, Benijah can post up a mismatch. Jonquel draws two and they get great offense, but they didn't always find themselves getting easy twos, maybe because of the 5-out stuff, maybe Jonquel not posting as much. So I think what separated them was just how consistently they were able to destroy teams on defensively because of all that length. And in addition to all that athleticism, they were maybe the highest motor defense in the league. I mean, like, you've seen Stewie. She's just never. It's insane. It's insane. I don't know if there's a player that reminds me of her. Maybe like Kevin Garnett, just in terms of the never shutting it off every play sort of mentality. And I think that really took him over the top, because Sabrina was awesome on defense against Minnesota. And I thought at times last season or 2 seasons ago, she was one of the worst defenders in the league. And now all of a sudden she's just hustling her ass off. A legitimately good defender in a finals context, which is just crazy.
Yeah, that's a pretty drastic improvement, and I do, wonder what the challenges are. Like we kind of touched on before. Like, with all this talent, it's almost like you have all-star teams out there, and you're
Mm-hmm.
not building an entire offense around like one player that can score or create. Like, you basically have a good problem to have, but there's just talent that everywhere, and you got to make everybody happy. You got to make sure everybody gets touches and shots and usage, and yet you're trying to win basketball games and build the like most efficient offense
Mm-hmm.
possible. So like, you could easily upset a superstar if they don't get enough touches, and at the same time, you're trying to find that balance of like, how do we actually balance all of these skills that everyone seems to bring. And it does seem like defense is kind of like a calling card at the end of the day, where like everyone can buy in and split the load. And like, and
Mm-hmm.
like, if you have a lot of stars and you're not sure what to do on offense, but everyone can play defense, well, at least everyone can kind of like, understand their role and kind of give full effort on that end without, feeling like they're getting, lost in the shuffle.
And they were bought in. The thing I think that separates what I've noticed recently, some truly great defenses, is their ability to mix up coverages on the fly. Like the Liberty would, as I said, switch late clock. They would also trap on the sidelines. Sometimes they would hedge and recover. I think that is a skill that's really stood out to me the more I've been watching basketball. And they were all bought in. And then, like you said, that buy-in, then you get run out offense. Then you play in transition, which is where all that talent you're just playing basketball. Yeah, all size. Yeah, yeah. So their matchups against the Connecticut Sun, who are also just massive, really illustrated the difference between just being kind of big and being big with skill. Like, Jonquel helps box out, sprints down the floor right here, gets an early seal, and then Sabrina throws a great entry pass for 2 points. Or that's the second possession. This possession, they kind of run. Let me see what this. Oh, this is the same possession.
Yeah, I was just highlighting John Quell's like early seal, like basically at the 3-point line. She's like,
Yeah.
you know what? I got the advantage here. I'm just gonna stop right here and box her out from here and just be open over the top.
Yeah, and the great thing about their size is that, Stewie could throw these entry passes, JJ could throw them to Stewie. Yeah, that's the possession, and then they come down and, Connecticut runs inverted pick and roll, and the spacing, the shooting isn't really there, so JJ can, help on Alyssa Thomas and then recover to like contest a 20-footer. When the Liberty are running their inverted pick and roll, this is not what's happening. Like, they're getting a much better look than this. They're putting more pressure on the defense than, a pretty easy help and recover and a contested 20-footer.
Right, and you have so much skill in the front court. You can, I mean, if you run the inverted with, Sabrina popping out,
Right.
instead of
That's the
her
other
running the
thing.
show, it's like just a knockdown shooter, and just the playmaking between all of them just helps create those options. It seems like.
That's a good observation. Like if Dejanay sets that inverted screen, and is kind of just hanging around the paint. Sabrina, when she is just flying out of there, and
Right.
then you have to worry about a 3-point threat.
Right. That's just what makes it so lethal. And we see more of these like 4-4-5 pick and rolls or 4-1 inverted pick and rolls now. And I mean, when you got players that can handle and pass and shoot like that, those are good basketball players that can kind of switch between roles seamlessly. And especially once you get reps doing it, like it makes a lot of sense how they were, so effective doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, the Liberty were great. And I think, they're a teaching tool for any offense. And then any offense and defense. And then this is some of the Jonquel Jones stuff. Just ridiculous. This is like the biggest, this is one of the most, 2 or 3 most physically imposing players in the league. Step back 3, D-cell, Euro, floater off the glass. She's one of one. And it's just crazy because they would run offense for her like this, like play off an advantage at the top of the key and go to work, as if kind of like for NBA fans, like almost like Karl Anthony Towns.
Right.
And this is another one where she can hit all these passes.
Quick pass right there. Just reading the defense.
And she got some just easy, deliveries, processing the floor. Like these aren't, mind-blowing passes, but you can just see the processing that she has and awareness of where her teammates are and where the advantage is going to be. So like on this one, almost like a staggered 77 handoff. It's a good cut by Stewie. But Jonquel knows what's happening before it even starts. This one,
I restarted. Yeah. I was just pointing out
the
defense there. I think it's Kalia Copper maybe, but like she just instantly reads the pop out of the double drag, like
because you can't give up that 3.
Yeah, it's 2-on-1 now. So like if she leaves her open, it's a shot. She comes and contests. Well, yes, who's wide open, cutting to the basket. You left Breanna Stewart open. That wasn't a smart decision.
No, they just simple actions put so much pressure on you. And again, same thing. You can't give up the 3 on the pick and pop, but that zone up defender is playing on alone. So that's a 2-on-1 on a whole side of the court. And those were the passes JJ was just so good at,
Such a money pass. I mean, that's just a dime right there, just in rhythm, little like almost like it has a little like a perfect bounce to it where she put a little spin on it.
Yeah, and you can feel JJ reading the coverage as the ball's coming her way, like she loads into the pass. And this is where they would just kill teams. And it's simple. Like their offense is simple. 77 double drags, pick and pops, roll and replace. That's really the foundation of their offense. And then I loved when they'd post drop. I mean, she was just throwing some
looking like Jokic on that one, just not even looking like, oh, why not?
Oh my God.
A little wrap around behind the back, no look.
No, she has a little Jokic comparison in her game. The Liberty were good with cutting space and filling. Like on that possession, you got a cutter and a replace. That one's just kind of simple spacing. But these teams have to double her in the post. Yeah, like on this one, Benaja's going to cut to drag one of those 2 defenders down the lane. Stewie's going to fill up to the top of the key. And then JJ is reading all that. I don't know how, but she is. And that is just so on the money.
Yeah, eyes in the back of her head. Yeah, I guess she realizes it's 3-on-2 on that side of the floor, and she sees one go low, one go high, and somebody's open right there. Sloot in the corner.
Yeah. Bam. She's just a great playmaker. And then this is just, I don't know, so strong.
It's just a wild pass. I mean, it needs to be in there.
I can't believe Leone missed it. But they're fun to watch.
Learning Basketball is a Swish Theory podcast hosted from Beyond the Arcade. Hey, that's me. You can find my work on Twitter, YouTube, Substack, and check out the team's writing at theswishtheory.com.
And then, Sabrina is the one we haven't really talked a ton about. We can just hit on her quickly. Like, the combo guard, I think you probably know, like, relate to this, almost became like a slur in the last few years of like, oh, he's not big enough to really play the two and can't shoot well enough, but he's also maybe not a playmaker enough to handle full-time one responsibilities. Almost like, no disrespect, like Monte Ellis is kind of who I'm thinking about towards the end of his career, who I loved, but
Shout out Monte. He was fun.
not always the nicest label. I don't know if you'd agree.
Yeah, no, it definitely became like there was a moment where it was like what you had to be, and then like it's backed away. And I think I hit on it on the last podcast I did with Zach Welch, where we drafted scoring creators and kind of came up with this term and did like one of the longest articles I've ever done, but it was a lot of fun. One of my like favorite pieces on decision making and primary initiators in sports, and that it's kind of evolved from like having a point guard, having a scorer, to having your best scorer become the point guard, become the offensive engine, and have to make a good decision for the team every time down, read the defense, react, and either score, create, draw a foul, look to kick based on that reaction. And that's more of the heliocentric type of offenses that, you know, have also kind of come and gone a little bit, but that's kind of where I think the lead option has developed into. And yeah, the combo guard itself probably a little more rare, but at the end of the day, pretty much all guards are now scorers, and a lot of people credit Steph Curry for that, where he obviously made it okay to launch 30-footers as the point guard, and like if you're good at it, then let them loose like that. Now coaches are asking you to stretch the floor and to hit those threes if that's a part of your game. So I think like the term itself probably is kind of a negative, but like in terms of like the actual guards, pretty much everyone has to be able to shoot, score, and create now. If as a guard, like you almost can't have many holes in your game, especially with how skilled the bigger positions have become.
And that was Sabrina this year. So like the 2023 Liberty, Courtney Vandersloot and Sabrina, that was really the engines of their offense. Crazy to think about it with Stewie on the court, where like, Stewie would take over in isolation often, but you picture 3-man actions, Sloot handling, Sabrina setting some off-ball screen for Stewie or whatnot, and then Sloot making the decision. You kind of have the finisher, the shooter, and the playmaker. And, pistol flare, Stewie slips to the rim, whatever. So Sabrina was just shooting 45% on catch and shoot threes. Just otherworldly. This year, they sign Leonie Fevich, they bring her over, another wing, and so now they can go Sabrina, Benijah, Fevich, Stewie, JJ. So a guard and just 4 huge athletes. Sabrina has to handle the ball a little bit more. Courtney Vandersloot, unfortunately, like takes a long bereavement leave. Her mother passed away. So they have a lot of time where it's just Sabrina, you're the full-time one. And I wrote about how her leap in that area, while still being able to fly off screens and be that off-ball threat, that's what made her, damn near MVP caliber. And you can see in some of these clips we're playing, she's getting all the way to the rim. That was a struggle for her in the past, like creating on the ball. You can probably see she's not the most like bursty, I'm going to shake you athlete, but the handle got tighter. She's using her strength, her decel in a lot of these, keeping the dribble alive, like snaking the pick and roll right there. All that craft really just took her game to the next level. And then, I think I included some passing clips maybe at the end. Here she strings out kind of the switch so JJ gets a mismatch. And, that's too easy. This one, they're going to double her from way outside, looks off the low man. That's like real, true point guard stuff. And that's what took her game to the next level.
Yeah, and it's important for teams to explore this with scorers probably, and to kind of give touches to their guards. And a lot of the times it doesn't work out. Like you ask them to go create, and they just don't figure it out, or they don't have the game slow down for them. There's like I think it's important to give a shooting guard some reps as the point guard to see if it works, and if they can kind of develop some of those point guard traits, some of the half court execution, some like use their advantages that they have as a scorer and a shooter to then, if they can develop that handle and learn the offense a little bit, learn how to set up other teammates, can they do some initiating and kind of become more efficient running offenses instead of just being more on the play finishing side of the offense as a shooter or a scorer after the advantage has been created, especially if they have like the advantage, they have the ability to create those advantages. And like you said, like it's not like she's just like exploding off the ball past everyone, but
Right.
you get a few screens, you get the decel, you snake a pick and roll or throw the hostage dribble with behind you and kind of plays at her own pace, little
Yeah.
hezzy. Like she gets to her spot, she gets downhill, and you mentioned she developed a handle there, and she's able to just get to the rim and score and look to create. And I'm sure that's done wonders just kind of to have that option as a part of the offense.
Yeah, and the other thing it does is it so expands the lineup construction possibilities. Sometimes she's playing with Sloot in the backcourt, who's a 5'6", pure point guard. Other times she's playing with Leonie Fibic as the 2 nominally, who's a 6'4", 3-and-D sort of player. That really illustrates how valuable this development was for her. And then, she had all this setting screens, coming off screens, hitting bombs off the catch. So it just made them really unguardable, and it allowed her to soak up more possessions because she could do it in a variety of ways. And then she could, like, this is, I'm pretty sure, oscillating between on-ball and off-ball efficacy. Like, she fakes the flare, she comes back, she gets a handoff, and then she throws a pick-and-roll dime. So right here, this is a little, blind pig action. Doesn't work out. I'll make another cut. I'll come back. I'll dribble around the hedge, and I'll hit the roller. So you gotta worry about her off-ball. You messed up a little because she got a clean look coming off a handoff. And now, because she made a great cut, right here, fake the flare or kind of blind pig, whatever. It doesn't totally work out. I'm still cutting. I'm making another cut. Now I got the ball in my hands. I'm exploding by the hedge and I'm hitting the roller. So if you give up an off-ball advantage to her, you might get screwed now that she has the ball in her hands. And It's funny, I view it as like a proxy almost for, because she doesn't have the burst and explosion, the shake on the ball that I was talking about. She uses the off-ball talent to like make up for that, because she comes off the screen, off the ball. Now she is the defender on her hip, and she hasn't taken a dribble yet.
Right, and that's the the hot button word, gravity, that people don't. Some people criticize like Steph doesn't have it, as if defenders aren't sending multiple defenders at him, like when he's not even with the ball, like he's just running around screens to get open, and he's still the main problem that everyone's worried about trying to solve. Like that's using your gravity to create more advantages other ways, like you said, instead of like just being at a standstill at the top of the key. Like, you kind of get the defense, try to catch them sleeping, get them rotating, get moving, fake a flare screen or fake an off ball screen to get open on the wing, and then cut back, and like all that development of the handle really helps kind of evolve all those things seamlessly. And you hit on like kind of what we were talking about earlier, is like when you're kind of able to put everyone down a position while keeping the skill, like that's what really seems to unlock the size skill combo, where like you have a point forward at point guard, you're surrounding them with length and defense and shooting and spacing and enough ball skills to kind of not have too many holes that can be picked on. So now if you have good basketball players that can defend, dribble, pass, and shoot around a scoring creator type like Sabrina, I mean, you're just destined to have a good team when you got that much. And obviously, you got to keep up with talent that everybody has. But that's basketball can be simple as that, and also complex. But in terms of team building, like that's what it comes down to me, is like target your star, someone that can score and create advantages for themselves and others, be a primary decision maker, and then surround them with good basketball players. And maybe if you're lucky, you get multiple stars, and it kind of all happens, on top. Like they just start stacking their talent and their advantages together.
Yeah, and this has been the thing that's, I've loved talking about the Liberty. We've been talking about them now like half an hour, but there's just so many layers, to this great, maybe once in, every few years we see a team like this, even in a 12, 13 team league. But the final clips of Sabrina, and you don't have to play them here, it really shows like the willingness and the buy-in that, GM Jonathan Kolb, head coach Sandy Brondello got from the group, the whole coaching staff, of course. Like Sabrina in 2023, when all this talent arrived, she's face of the franchise. She's handling the ball a lot. She's turning it over. She's growing. She has the ball in her hands all the time. They bring in all this talent 2 years ago, and she is just screening the hell out of everybody off the ball, setting physical screens, running around. Steph Curry is the ultimate gold standard for that sort of stuff for guards, and she mentions him a lot, but that's where she's like getting her game off in 2023. And then in 2024, she still has that in her and that willingness and that drive to be a great screener and off ball player while doing all that other stuff. And yeah, this final possession, I think, just kind of encapsulates it all. They run, it's 16 seconds of her just nonstop. UCLA cut, they'd get a ton off that, set a back screen, come up, get a handoff, try to create an advantage, rescreen, maybe doesn't have anything, gives it up, cuts again, drives baseline, gets to the floater. It's just 16 seconds where she's putting so much pressure on a defense every action. And I can tell you the Liberty scored off all of those individual actions this year. Like they got stuff on the initial UCLA cut. They got stuff when she set the back screen. They got stuff on the initial handoff. The Suns stop every one of those. And then Sabrina cuts again, gets a handoff, and scores a floater.
She just makes out of nothing. And I mean, it's important to note, like you just did, the sequencing that is involved with that play, how there's 4 different options they're trying to run. The defense stops all of them, and yet the star wins out because she's willing to relocate. And that's something that not all the stars are willing to do, is run off ball, put full effort off ball nonstop. And when a play goes dead, instantly run to the ball and try to create something out of nothing. And like it's a little bit, on the rarer side when it comes to stars. So like you said, it kind of shows everything that she can do. And the Liberty are just incredible. I'm glad we hit on them and celebrated them a little bit here. And I'm down to transition a little bit, hit on some of these NBA prospects that have been popping out. Could hit right in on Scoot Henderson, who's just like popping right out. He had another coming out party type of a game after kind of a rocky kind of development up and down cycle. But like the other day against your Nets,
against my Nets, I saw it.
Yeah, so you saw it live, and I caught the game as well, and Scoot balled out. I mean, his 3-pointers were insane. Like he was 8 for 10 from 3, finished with 39 points, 6 assists, 4 boards, 2 steals. Had first quarter with 4 threes, with a pull up off a step back, pull up in pick and roll. He had some nice passing too. I thought, like some driving kicks into the paint, found the open shooters, like hit Eaton with a nice little pick and roll lob, and was making winning plays with like a swinging his arms for a deflection and knocking the ball like up into second row or something like that.
Yeah, he looked good. It's interesting because last year when I wrote it, I wrote a long piece about Scoot halfway through his rookie year, and I wondered if I was like hyper fixating on stuff too much. Like I felt like his organization on his jumper was all over the place. Sometimes his balance, his energy transfer, he had like all these different shots. And I felt like against the Nets, that was the thing. He hit 8 threes. His shot looked really fluid. I'm not a shot doctor, but it just felt right. But I'm wondering how you feel about what I think is his main issue, which is if you catch him on the right game, he still looks like he has star potential, the way he finishes through contact, the handle, the decel, all that stuff. But it feels like he has no sense of when to press each button. Like he doesn't know when the decel is the right move. He doesn't know when to go off 2 feet. Like he sees the advantage, but sometimes he throws the correct lob. Other times he throws a bounce pass when it should be a lob. Like it's the decision making on a granular level and then I struggle to I don't know how that improves. I don't know if that improves. It's still just flashes at this point. You know what I mean? I don't know if you've had that experience watching any Orlando guards or players or anybody that you've seen.
Yeah, and I'd say definitely definitely something to keep an eye on, especially with young guards. I'd say with on the shoot side, like that first step burst is his calling card. That's
Yeah.
going to be there. Like that's his skill that differentiates him from 99% of the players in the league, let alone the world. And it kind of reminds me of Jaden Ivey as well, where like they're going to be able to get past just about any player in front of them at any time. So like we know that going in, he can always do that. And like you mentioned, the next step is the game slowing down for him to the point where he knows what to do from there. And you know, to his credit, he's in the league. He's made it this far. He shows the flashes. So obviously, like he has the skills and he knows what to do. And he probably, in my opinion, would have to have the game slow down to learn how and when to use it. So the play that comes to mind a little bit is Jalen Suggs, where he's not entirely there yet as like a full time, like fully developed player, but he has definitely progressed in a lot of different areas, especially with the ball in his hand, where you see a little bit of that development, the game slowing down, the processing, and not just trying to go 100% flying downhill north south nonstop every time and just throwing something up hoping for a call or something. Like, you know, you saw improvements finishing at the rim for him early on. He's been pretty consistent on handoff efficiency throughout his career, but we've seen like pick and roll development. And you know, the point guard experiment is still kind of up in the air on if he's a full-time point guard. Personally,
Right.
I think he's a lockdown defender, like one of the best in the league defensively, and then has developed a lot as a three-point shooter, has shown a little bit of scoring versatility in his efficiency on handoffs and ISOs and transitions and pick and rolls. And so, like, to me, I would probably prefer him as the off guard, focusing on those things because he's fairly good at them. But I think this is a great time, especially with Orlando dealing with so many injuries in the front court with their main guys being out anyway. Like that, it's a great time to kind of, like we talked about with Sabrina earlier, put the ball in your scorer's hands and your shooter's hands and see if they can develop some playmaking reps. See if that game slows down for them so that when it comes playoff time, they've had 100 scenarios already of seeing the defense, having to read and react to this defense. It's not the first time with their ball in their hands, trying to like make it up as they go. So they at least have seen it before, and you hope that you know that development that you see in all the other areas starts to carry over. Like I'm someone who tries not to really assume a prospect is a finished product until like year 4 or 5 even, especially, and that was back when they were getting drafted as like juniors in college and were 25 years old by then. Some of these guys are like 18 entering the league, so their athletic prime might not hit until 25 years old, 27 years old, something like that. So
Hey, yeah. Sorry, I cut out there for a bit, but
you're good. Yeah, I got you back here now. So
I agree. It's like
yeah,
it is a long-term process, and the thing with Scoot, it feels frustrating right now, and especially the sect of real real numbers heavy analysts have maybe given up on him, just how low a lot of his all-in-one metrics, a lot of his even, true shooting stuff like that is for, a guy who's 20 years old now, where you want it to be in the upward trajectory. However, there are positive signs. Like everything is up this year that you'd want to be up. So like his assist to usage rate is up while the turnovers are essentially the same. He's more efficient this year, points per shot. He's taken 40% of his shots at the rim, and he's shooting 35% from three, up from 33% last year. He's getting fouled on more of his shots. So while it's still not where I think his highest draft, proponents wanted it to be, it is getting there. And like you said at the very top, I'll never, I think, give up on him because of his ability to break the paint. And man, he had a move against the Nets where he was on the left side of the court and he threw it. He did like a double cross between his legs, right to left between the legs, and then brought it right back. And his defender just buckled and he got into the paint. And if he can just, it's like I'm saying, it's so much easier said than done. But if he can just press the right button each time, because he has all of it in him, I've seen it. I like in this article, you'll see I've seen his ability to break the paint and then see the low man and then see the X out guy and hit the wing, where he goes roller to corner to wing and it's all there and it's boom. And he delivers the ball the right way. But I don't know. He's still a really interesting watch to me. And he's barely over, 2,000 career minutes. But then there's plays like that, like the first one where it's almost like a malfunction. It's like, Scoot, why are you committing such an insane offensive foul right there? Like there are just decisions that he makes that don't seem real.
Yeah. And, like we said, like if it's going to work, I think that's something that might just take time and, reps. And Portland's not necessarily like trying to compete for a title this year. So like this is the time to do it. And, I think having 3 guards that you run your offense through can work when you're trying to win. But if you're trying to develop like almost all of them, it can be a lot to kind of balance the load. So like maybe just kind of focusing on 1 or 2 guards. I don't know. I'm just making an assumption that like it's hard to like have multiple decision makers that aren't like fully ready-made NBA products all figuring it out together. Maybe it would help to just have 2 instead of 3. So, if they have to trade Simons to Orlando, like I understand, like, you got to do what you got to do.
You'll forgive them.
It's okay. We'll help them out there. But
this reminds me of these clips remind me of Dennis Smith Jr. Like, look at how different his jumper is each time. Just like the base organization, like that's what stood out to me when I was trying to figure out why his shooting numbers were so poor his rookie year. And every jumper I watched, it was like a different load.
I see.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, why? Like, it's almost just. This sounds harsh, but like a lack of discipline, as a jump shooter. And yeah, I mean, some guys, I don't know, obviously there's slight variations when great shooters shoot, whatever. But like, you look at that, and he had one of these against the Nets, this exact move.
Oh yeah,
it just feels a lot cleaner after looking at the other ones. You know what I mean?
Yeah, in rhythm shot right there. And yeah, I mean they obviously were hitting against the Nets. They look clean in that one. And yeah, I don't know if that's maybe getting a shooting coach and trying to figure out a specific form that you do every time. Like I would imagine being such an otherworldly athlete that you probably can lean on that at multiple levels and get by and produce. And maybe you don't necessarily focus on having the same shot every time, like Klay Thompson, where it's just like the perfect form shot release every single time down. But at this level, to become consistent, you probably do want to rely on those kind of like muscle memory mechanics where you don't even have to think about it. Everything's like loading up and getting out consistently the same way. So when you're tired and your legs are gone in the fourth, you still don't even think about it. You're just, loading up and release the same form every time. So you would like to see that become more consistent for sure. And we'll see. I'm still, I'm not selling on Scoot. I think, anyone that can score that many points and shoot that well and has in one game, I mean, obviously it's not, that's not his new average or something like that, but that like we've hit on a few times, like the burst and the paint penetration is there. The explosiveness is there. He flashes just about every tool you want to see. So, putting it all together, and development and touches, kind of adding all that up over time, you would hope the game slows down and he's able to figure that part out. And that's a part of the game. And, I wouldn't sell my shoot stock yet when you see all the tools there at the NBA level. But, it's okay. We've had a pretty big sample size to be a little worried that it's not, going to be top 2, top 3 pick level, impact and
Right.
everything. But, I think he was drafted that high for good reason. And, he's a super exciting talent, super explosive. And I think the touch that he shows, like from the floater on the passing, like the vision and the shooting touch from outside, like are all good enough traits where, I'm a believer that if he's working hard at it, that he'll figure it out eventually. And Portland's a good place to do that as they're rebuilding, looking for talent, trying to figure out who to keep and who to invest in and build around long term. And so, some guys take a little longer than others, but I think he's got a talent worth betting on, especially on that roster.
Definitely. And yeah, and it's, he's a level of prospect as we transition that, the Nets even now would love to have. And it was funny that he had his career game against them, 39 points.
Yeah, so jump into the Nets.
Yeah, it's
we're
really
here.
about the draft. It's, I mean, they lost by 59 points.
Man, when you lose
but
by
I do,
59.
I mean, we should give some love to like Cam Johnson, who's had this mid-career leap to like he's handling so many DHOs and coming off screens and like making great decisions and making so many shots. That's an uncommon leap for a guy in his 6th year at age 28. And I think Jordi Fernandez, they were in the top half of half-court offense until like a week or two ago, which is just insane to me, considering the moving pieces and the relative lack of NBA talent, offensive talent. Like, no disrespect to Keon Johnson and Tyrese Martin, but when that's your starting backcourt for a couple weeks and you're still hanging around league average half-court offense, I got to tip my hat to the coach, I think.
Yeah, and shout out to Cam, like you said, like he was a good role player on a team that made the finals in Phoenix, and he's shown that he can scale his usage up and remain efficient in a bigger role here in Brooklyn. And like he's a high volume 3-point shooter, a good team defender, and you've mentioned some of the other ancillary skills that have kind of rounded out up to 4.6 assists to only 2.5 turnovers a game. That's per 100. Sorry about that. I thought it was looking at his averages. So, good decision maker with the ball. And, I think he's probably the most coveted trade piece that isn't maybe a fringe. If he's not I wouldn't call him like a star trade piece yet, but like he's the next level down, like the most coveted. Like any team that wants to add a good basketball player to their team, he's the first name that comes up, whether it's the Kings, the Warriors, like any team just trying to improve for today and the future, like a winning player, he's the guy. And like he's the kind of like my next question about the Nets, and we haven't even mentioned D'Lo, but what are they doing? First of all, what are they doing? are they trying to compete right
what
now?
Are they doing? That is
trying to rebuild.
evergreen question for the Brooklyn Nets. What are they doing? I think they're pretty clearly rebuilding. I mean, like, obviously that doesn't take a detective to figure that out. There's a lot of smoke about, they got all this cap space this summer. They're going to be super active if a star hits the market in trade season. But they're really set up for these next 2 drafts. They have 4 first-round picks this year, including their own. The other 3 are like Rockets, Clippers, or Rockets, Bucks, Knicks. So probably late in the first round. But you trade them, you package them, you move back, whatever. And then they have their own next year. And I think that is the window where they're going to be bad. And this year it's tough to be bad because they had a roster with all these vets. And you trade Dorian Finney-Smith, but you have to take back salary. And now you're taking back D'Angelo Russell, who for all of his warts is a pretty capable offensive player. He's an upgrade over a starting backcourt again of Keon Johnson and Ben Simmons and Tyrese Martin. And when he's running 3-man actions with Cam Johnson and Nick Claxton, it's like, that's a real NBA offense. They put up 132 in Portland with all those 3 guys, with not Nick, but D'Lo and Cam back. And it obviously is, their incentive to be bad, but I don't think it has to be for that long. I think, they're in Brooklyn. They can attract stars, trades. They got cap space, whatever. I really hope next year, unless Giannis puts his fist on the table and says, I'm going to Brooklyn this offseason, next year I hope they have 3-4 rookies on the roster getting real minutes. I hope the sophomores that they have this year are playing real minutes. They're bad. They develop. They get another high draft pick. And if the stars align, you have Kasparas, Yakuchonis, and I don't know, Cameron Boozer leading the Nets in 2 years, or Cooper Flagg, and whoever.
Yeah.
But that's the goal, and then you build up from that. Then you're active in the trade market, in free agency. I think that's the path they've very clearly set themselves on. A lot of the smoke is like, oh, well, they could trade for a star and they want to go for it this offseason. I think that for now is just smoke, because their actions have really have signaled, like, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Sean Marks traded for his picks back. He basically shorted all of his Phoenix stock, which I wish the Nets still had some of that Phoenix stock, to get his own picks back. You don't waltz into that by accident.
Yeah, that's a good point. That that when you have your own picks, you control a little bit more of your own incentives compared to just having other teams' picks, where it's a little bit more up in the air and out of your control, and you're hoping that something goes wrong and it works out. And obviously, if you have both, I mean, Brooklyn has shown that they can be a destination city. They obviously attracted Durant, Kyrie, and Harden at one point not too long ago. And now they've flipped the infamous trade for Garnett and Pierce, where they gave up all the picks to get them. Now they are the team, or one of the teams, obviously with the Thunder and others, but that have collected a lot of picks for their former superstars that were on this team. So it's a great time to be bad. It's a good time for a fire sale, like in terms of the draft picks or the prospects coming up, like Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Cam Boozer. AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, Tyron Stokes the next year. Like there's a lot of high-end talent to tank for, in a sense.
The thing that's tough right now with Brooklyn is that they don't really have the young talent that makes these sort of seasons fun. I think that's just going to be this season. But I think the reason there's a lot of consternation in the fan base and all of these, questions about their future is really, like, Noah Clowney is the one. Oh, these young guys getting real minutes. Like, what can he be? Even though we're losing, like, I'm having a lot of fun watching his development. Normally, young bad teams have a lot of that. The Nets don't really have that right now, which is why I think next season, hopefully, I hope is different. You had 3 to 4 rookies. You take some more flyers on young guys. They just signed Tosan Awoma on a 2-way contract, and just having his, like, energy has been really fun. But the first year of a rebuild is tough for that reason, because what are we really watching for? I think once they get that, and I hope they do have that next year, I hope they make 3 or 4 picks and play all these guys. It'll be a lot easier to stomach. I mean, the Magic just kind of recently went through this. They weren't that good 2 years ago, but watching Franz, Suggs, Paolo grow, even as they were winning, I don't know, 25, 30 games. I don't know if I'm underestimating them there, but I'm sure that made it a lot easier to swallow than watching Cam Johnson, who's probably going to be gone, Nick Claxton, who's 25, 26, D'Lo, these guys that aren't probably not super long-term building blocks. And even if they are, you're not really tracking their development game by game.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like having the young core in place and getting to watch their development is more fun, in my opinion, than watching a middling team that doesn't play defense and isn't necessarily going to be around in a few years. And they're in that early stage, which reminds me of the Vucevic teams, but we don't have to dive into those teams. But it's an interesting flip that they did when immediately I saw the strategy, but it was interesting how it would play out, because immediately they went from all these stars to just collecting as many wings as they could that were like playable wings, like Dorian Finney-Smith. But the idea there was to flip them for more picks down the line because
Mhm.
most of them will probably be attractive pieces one by one to other teams. It was interesting how they would all fit together, but they're in this stage where it feels more like they're collecting good players to then flip them for more picks and young players down the line rather than necessarily build around any one of
Yeah.
these guys. And
And
so
yeah.
that was my follow up was like, but you pretty much already answered it. Is there anyone here that, interests you in the long term that you think is going to be around like a Zaire Williams? You mentioned Clowney, a Darian Sharp, and, Jalen Wilson, like just anyone that you think might be around kind of, going forward. But otherwise, they have a lot of good basketball players. Like I'm not sure if Nick Claxton is as invested as he normally is, but like he's always been a good defender and play
He's
finisher.
killing me.
Yeah,
He's
like
killing me,
what
man.
happened to him? But
Yeah,
I'm
just
also
as
with you
his
on
number.
D'Lo. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, you're good. Yeah, just as his number one fan, for a long time and like tracking his development. I've said it a million times, but the guy in 2023, top 10 defensive player of the year voting, led the
Yeah,
league in field goal percentage, and like was like taking guys a dribble or two. It wasn't all just catching and lobs at the rim. And so that's the other thing about Aribo. The losing, I think, has been tough on him.
sure.
I would say before the season, I'm super excited to see him like flex those ball handling and finishing skills and like a DHO delay type of offense under Jordy. Hasn't really worked out that way this year. But I think it's too early to like give up on him as part of being around for the next iteration of the Nets. I don't think, there's been no smoke about trading him, which maybe
Interesting.
should tell you something.
Yeah, interesting.
Noah Clowney is their, most interesting long-term prospect. Like he's 20. And, you mentioned D'Lo. Expiring free agent, he really does help them. But other than that, I don't know if he's going to be here past the trade deadline, but it is kind of a funny reunion.
Yeah, it is fun. I mean, he had his best years there. With D'Lo, like the fan in me likes watching him play, and I think he can, at the very least, run an offense. And underrated passer, can run pick and rolls, can be an efficient shooter. The analyst in me says, there hasn't been much winning impact at most of his stops, especially on the defensive end. But if you just kind of need someone to run your offense, like you mentioned, he's probably an upgrade. He'd probably be an upgrade in Orlando on a playoff team, running some offense there
Yeah.
and hitting some off ball stuff. But that defense is a big swing factor. I was wondering if you think, the Mount Vert connection, will he maybe get Ben Simmons a little bit of a revival, bringing back that D'Lo to Ben connection and getting him invested too? Because he's another guy that, like, I imagine knowing you're probably not competing for it all might disincentivize some of this defense when it comes to Claxton and Ben Simmons, who
Right.
are just proven defenders. And I view Claxton as like the Gafford of the trade deadline this year for the where the Mavs, found him on a middling team who can be a strong defender, strong play finisher. But you say there's no rumors or trade interest in that sense, so that's interesting that maybe they try to keep him as that vet that they know plays good basketball when he has the right incentives around.
Yeah, all of a sudden, I mean, now he's making $25 million a year for the next 4 years. And when he's playing well, that's just fine for like a fringe top 10 center. When he's not anywhere near like top 10 centers this year. Maybe teams are a little more wary of trading for him. But, I would think if a good front office has done their pro scouting and sees like Nick Claxton as a revival candidate, they should be all over him. D'Lo and Ben really, especially Ben as of late, like they really do make this Nets offense competent because per cleaning the glass, they are the worst transition offense in the league in terms of points added, per 100 possessions in transition. D'Lo, for all of his warts, he's not the fastest or most explosive, but he gets those hit-ahead passes. Like in the open court when he's playing, when there's all this space and it's like a 4-on-3. I mean, that's when his passing really flashes. Like he can see all that. He can manipulate defenders. Ben is the same way, getting rebounds and hitting it ahead. Portland stinks, but they put up 132 points on Portland. They've been averaging damn near under 100 points since January 1st, mostly without those two guys. So small sample size, but that's where they really impact the Nets. Like they get their transition offense and even early offense, semi-transition to respectable levels. And on a team without, real shot creators, that makes a world of difference because now you're playing in advantage situations when you're bringing the ball up.
Yeah, those are real
yeah.
playmakers. And Ben,
Yeah.
we're a few years out, but he was top 3 in 3-point assists, like not only a couple years ago, but it was before the injuries. But he was up there with anyone in terms of creating 3-pointers or at least good looks for others. As like you mentioned, that transition downhill force. Like they're two good playmakers, and you have good shooters and shot makers in the cams around them, and Claxton a good play finisher. Like there's an outline of a competitive offense here. And
Yeah.
if everyone can buy in on defense, that is
that's what they
probably
were. That's what they were in the beginning of the season when they were like kind of hovering near 500. Like it's not devoid of talent. And the thing about Ben that's funny is like he, there is some value in having a guy that loves to pass. And obviously there's a lot of possessions that look bad. But just having like a guy who loves to move the ball around quickly and hit 3-point guy and just create looks, especially on a bad team, there are stretches where he does really help them. But
sure.
Yeah, I figured we could finish with just like little draft stuff since that's I think Nets fans are at the point of the year where they're pretty interested in that. I told you before, I've watched the Rutgers guys, I've watched the Duke guys, I've watched Kasparas, Yakuchonis. I'm familiarizing myself with some of the other guys. Do you have any late round shots that you really like Nets fans should know if they're picking between, because they got 3 picks right now between like 15 and 25.
There's a lot of late risers, but
Right.
it looks like I don't know if Noah Penda will still be there, but he's a guy that like is projected second round, but like a lot of scouting circles that we talk to are really high on him. Like he should be in the lottery. Like he's a clear like defensive energy guy, good connector. You've seen like Danny Wolf from Michigan, the 7-foot point guard type that has really risen lately upboards. I'm a big Asa Newell fan. I don't think he'll be available that late, but the projections kind of have him all over. But I think he'll be more of a lottery guy. But yeah, in terms of that round, I mean, I imagine Nets fans want to take a swing on talent, and so if I'm trying to think of like who would actually drop that far, but like Derek Queen is one of these like big swings on upside that like if he somehow was available late in the lottery, that he's mocked in the 20s sometimes. So that's something where some people, this is a draft where it feels like there's a lot of guys that could go as high as 3 and as low as 20, and for whatever reason, that's just how this class has panned out after Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper. But maybe some more names will kind of jump out by then. But did you have anyone that you're hoping the Nets land?
I mean, he might be right now. They're 7th in lotto odds, which means it's like a 62/3 chance that they pick between 6 and 8. I think they'll rise. I think Portland will pass them. I think one of those next few teams could pass them. So let's say they end up around 4 or 5 on average. Kasparas Yakuchonis is probably playing his way into like not consensus top 3 yet, but like if you had to put money down on who's going number 3 or who's the 3rd best prospect, even regardless of that, I really like Brooklyn as a landing spot for him because I want him to get a lot of ball handling reps early. And you say that with every guard, but I want to see him figure out, how to get off the dribble threes against NBA comp. I want to see the foul drawing early, see how that translates. I want to see him read more spaced out, even more like high spread pick and roll floor situations. And then obviously the question with him is catch and shoot, 3-point shooting, if the foul drawing is going to sustain against NBA athletes. But for him, I kind of struggle with the evaluation because I'm like, the production's there, the flashes are there, but I feel like I'm fixating on these little things. I'm like, oh, well, he's not super athletic, and oh, the burst, and oh, sometimes the passing is just kind of basic reads. I don't know if the foul drawing against better athletic competition is going to sustain. But, I feel like I'm missing the forest for the trees. I'm like, look at all that he is doing. So I just think that's a guy that figures out some of his limitations against NBA comp early on. I think the Nets could be a really good spot for him because they should have a ton of offensive, creation waiting for him if they drafted him this year. I think that is a name that Nets fans should really be thrilled about if they were in range for him.
Yeah, so a great look there. I mean, I'd agree. He's probably earned that third slot in the consensus big board style of things, and that would be a good spot for a lot of reasons, especially for the touches and the usage that you mentioned. Like you just seeing what he has, full time point forward, point guard type. The defense at the next level is probably what concerns me most with kind of his athleticism, but the offense looks really good. Like he has incredible vision, can run pick and rolls, can use a screen to create offense for himself and others. Like he doesn't necessarily attack mid range that much, but like he's flashed it a little bit. He can use his kind of, even we hit on Sabrina earlier, like like she does. He can kind of like use those deceleration, body control, the herky jerky movement, controlling the angles to get to the spots that he wants to get to on the downhill drives and finish strong or finish smooth, clean at the rim with the floaters and finger rolls, and has a lethal step back 3-point shot. It looks like if you watched at him with your eyes squinted, you would think you're watching like 80% or not 80%, but like some other version of like a Luka Doncic or a Franz Wagner in the
Yeah,
play style.
he has. It's
like,
a lot of that. Like,
so
getting
that's a fun.
Off the dribble threes and stuff.
His spot obviously has that left step back kill shot that Luka has as well. So that's the kind of offense that you'd be looking at, and that's a good offensive player, processor, pretty much wherever he lands. But
right,
that you do want to get that usage for sure. And I mean, obviously, Flagg's the home run there. Dylan Harper would be incredible. And I think the Nets are one of these teams that should probably go upside over good basketball player only because they really need that star to build around. So I might be higher on a handful of good basketball players that do a lot of things well, but taking an upside swing on someone that could be a star, even if it's a small percent chance, like I think, you're in that star hunting territory. And in terms of where the Nets are at, and later in the first, it looks like Rasheer Fleming, Thomas Sorber, Jace Richardson are some good names that could be there in the 20s. That good basketball players. Cam Jones is a lot of fun. I'd say Hugo Gonzalez is more of like that upside swing late in the draft where you don't exactly know. He's really young and has won a lot of awards internationally and brings high impact, but it's kind of that high risk, high reward type of swing. But in terms of a late pick in the first round that you're just, gonna see what happens with talent, that's a guy you can take a swing on. So
that's why I'm not super high. And it's funny, Net fans, the New Jersey connection with a lot of them, Rutgers guys. That's why I do not want them to take Ace Bailey. And I know Ace is kind of getting dumped on as a prospect as of late, and I don't mean to, but for me, I just think the lack of ball handling, space creation, and floor processing, I see a future for him as a productive NBA player, buying in, coming off screens, being like a 1-2 dribble max, like offensive threat, rebounding. There's some defensive flashes I really like as a perimeter guy that can also maybe protect the rim a little, as a weak side guy. I just don't see a lot of star upside there, which is funny to say about a prospect with his shot making flashes. You think a lot of people think, oh, wow, like high upside, Kevin Durant light, like could be a star, Whereas I look at that and I think I see the path to him being a productive NBA player, but just with the things that he doesn't do and is so far away from doing at an NBA level, I don't see like the star upside for him. So that's a prospect that, again, I'm not trying to hate on, but I just think as a fit for the Nets, despite a lot of the noise and the fans maybe clamoring for him, that I don't really like for the Nets. And, same thing with if they fall to 7 or 8, or if they stay at 7 or 8, like Knueppel, who I like. I think he's going to be a good NBA player. That's not like a swing I would love for the Nets.
Yeah, that's totally fair. And, Ace is probably the most polarizing prospect in this draft for that reason. Like, I think
Mhm.
expectations are going to really kind of maybe make people end up like disappointed in the things that you talked about because maybe there's a little bit lack of self-creation handle to get downhill, and also maybe a little bit of bucket getting focus compared to trying to set up teammates. Like he has
Mhm.
one goal in mind, and that's putting the ball through the net. But like you mentioned, like I think he does NBA thing, like a handful of NBA traits pretty well, like with
Yeah.
tough shot making, the interesting angles he's able to get 3-point shots off, the defensive flashes are there, the rebounding is there. So like there's like a D&3 role waiting for him if he's ready to accept it. And like maybe you hope that something else comes together with
Right.
all those other skills, and that's part of the analysis aspect. But I think that's kind of more of his floor, and like it's like, is he willing to accept the role? If he gets drafted too high, will the team even be willing to kind of put him in that role, or will they try to ask him to do too much and get fans disappointed in him? But I compare it. The closest thing that comes to mind recently is with Jabari Smith, where like a similar type of expectations were put on him, and like he's clearly good at a handful of things in basketball, and instead of asking him to be the clear star, like he's been good in the Houston system, especially surrounded by all these other defense and playmakers. Like he's good at what he does, so let him be good at what he does instead of trying to ask him to do too much. So like that would be,
Mhm.
they're a little too good to get him. But is there anywhere in the lottery we could try to rapid fire if you'd like, kind of some favorite spots that these Rutgers and Duke prospects and Kasparas, if you'd like any spots where you might like to see them go, starting with Ace. If is there a team that stands out in the current lottery to you that could
I
be
I'm
cool?
I mean, maybe if Sacramento goes a different direction, like I like Sac for him. I don't know about the playing time right away, but just picturing him kind of coming off curls and
Yeah,
screens and they would maybe need his rebounding with Sabonis at center. I know Sabonis is such a good rebounder, but like, their second and, their tertiary, secondary rebounders. That's like a cool fit for Ace if the playing time is there.
yeah.
Um,
That's a good call.
you know,
Especially
I
he oddly
yeah.
has like a Malik Monk type of jump shot as well, like where he can just
Mhm.
get it off at any angle, and he's taller, obviously. So like there is an advantage there, and that's a good call with the defense, the rebounds, the handoffs. Somebody that could slide into kind of a system already in place and do what they do well. And
Yep.
whether Fox is there or not, he can still kind of do those things around Sabonis screen. So I like that fit there. And
I wouldn't hate Chicago. I mean,
all right,
if they still have Lonzo and even Josh Giddey next year, I don't mind him running in transition, getting his spots, kind of forming at this tall wing duo with Matas Buzelis. And, I don't think that's a spot where he's going to be forced to play a ton of high pick and roll and like see two defenders all the time. Um, yeah. And then I think, the spots that aren't maybe so great for him are like Brooklyn, you know, even Washington. I don't love. They kind of he just doesn't feel like a Wizards like sliding into that super cleanly. I don't know if I can articulate exactly why, but
yeah, it's kind of unfair for me to pick like the 14th team of the lottery, but the Heat are able to churn out like
the
high
Heat,
two-way
yeah,
impact players. So they probably wouldn't ask him to create everything as a rookie. Like they'd probably get him to focus on defense and threes and kind of build out from there. So that could be an interesting spot as well. And his teammate Dylan Harper. I mean, like uh, Cooper Flagg's a guy that will improve any team he falls on. Dylan Harper probably would as well. So it's not
yeah,
like a perfect fit. But at the top there's the Wizards, the Pelicans, the Hornets, the Raptors, the Jazz, Blazers, Nets, Sixers are in the top 8, and you got the Bulls,
yeah.
Spurs, Suns, Kings, Warriors, and Heat rounding out the lottery at the moment. I think
Even yeah, even like the Nets. I mean, well, everything I said about Kasparas applies to not everything, but Dylan Harper. Just coming in and really would be the driver of the franchise. It's a lot
yes.
of pressure, but just with his ball handling skills, and I'd love to see, I'd love to see him get a lot of opportunity in Brooklyn early on too. And that's a great Washington spot too. You imagine him, Bilal, Alex Sarr, 3-man offense would be really intriguing. And
Absolutely.
then Cooper is beyond reproach. He'll go anywhere and he'll be awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Those two guys, I think, because of their defense and because of all of their skills that they bring offensively, they're so well rounded that they have the best chance of being that like franchise cornerstone, multi-time All-Star type of player.
Yeah.
Maybe an All NBA one day, maybe an all likely an All Defense in Flagg's case one day, if not more. So it's hard to go wrong with those guys. I definitely think like the teams that don't have a star yet or a clear superstar are the ones that should be targeting those type of players at the top. And whereas like, a Knueppel, like you mentioned before as well, like he's another guy almost like Liam McNeely also reminds me of that type of off-ball shooter where that player type could fit in with the Kings doing what they're doing with Malik Monk or Kevin Huerter coming off the screens and attacking closeouts and running the handoffs there. That's like ready-made, drop in, and he can play that style like pretty quickly.
Yeah, I'd like Khan in Philly. I'd like Knueppel in Philly. Like you can picture some of the the dribble handoffs with Joel, or even just I trust him to attack closeouts. I trust him to like walk in the NBA and shoot close to 40% from three. And if a guy runs him off the line, I trust him to, take 2 dribbles and make a driving kick pass.
That's a good call with Embiid. I mean, Embiid and JJ Redick had the best handoff in the league for a year or two, the most efficient by far. So like trying to recreate a little bit of those sets, that's a good call for him. And I don't know how high he will necessarily go. He might not even end up in the lottery, but he's definitely like in that first round range of a guy. And the only other big kind of first round projected guy we haven't touched on is Khaman Maluach. He's shown a lot as a play finisher. I like really love him as a defensive anchor. A lot of people like his touch around the rim as a play finisher, rim roller, lob threat. So you could imagine pairing him with, a Trae Young or Alonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, really, but Lonzo too, I suppose. Just someone that can run the offense and play finish around him and kind of be a defensive anchor with those guys. Seem like natural fits for someone like that.
Yeah, even if he were to somehow fall in the Nets later picks, that'd be awesome just to get like a cornerstone type of guy around the rim. Not that I think, maybe the Knicks or Bucks fall to like 16 and maybe Khaman fall. I don't know. But that'd be if the Nets trade up, obviously. But yeah, that's where the Nets season is headed. It's about the draft. It's about the draft lottery. And then hopefully this time next year, even if they're losing, we get some more player development, meat on the bone to really analyze. But yeah, man, I've had a good time. We touched on a lot of stuff.
No doubt. I appreciate you taking the time to talk some Nets and Liberty, update us all on what Brooklyn is up to these days. And, we're trying to figure it out with them, but, they're playing some fun ball when everybody's healthy. And, at least they're a league pass darling on that end, able to tune in and catch D-Lo, rack up 10 assists, or maybe one of the cams goes off for 20 or 30 or something like that.
They play hard.
I mean, yeah, it's fire sale time in the other side of that coin. Like, it's time to find a fun prospect to build around, give fans hope for going forward. And you got the 7th best odds right now. There's 2 clear stars, but there's still a couple guys in the lottery that have some of that star potential that is worth an upside swing. So hopefully Brooklyn,
you never know,
lands one of them, and you get somebody to root for going forward. But I appreciate you taking the time, talk a little hoops. Always a fun time, Lucas.
Of course, dude. We'll have a recurring segment. What in the world are the Nets up to when I'm back?
I like it. That's how it's done. All right,
dude.
have a good one.
Yeah, see you, dude.